Hello students, welcome to the present segment on Ozymandias. We had been reading this poem, and as I have told you that in the very first line, I met a traveller from an antique land. Shelley distances himself from the narrative as well as sets himself up as a kind of a frame narrator. And where is this traveller from? From an antique land. From a land which has some antique value, meaning which has some historical importance. That's the ostensible meaning over here. But antique also reminds us of something that has only become a part of history, that's dead now, that's valuable because it's historical. I met a traveller from an antique land, and what did this traveller say? Who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone." The two legs of stone are standing in the desert. There was a statue over there, and there is no trunk. Trunk is the middle part of the body, and the trunk has entirely disappeared. You can see that the trunk is no longer there. In the entire poem, we are not able to trace out the trunk. Stand in the desert, only this part is erect, the two legs. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies. Visage is the mouth, the face rather. Half sunk, a shattered visage. So there's the face, the head of the statue is lying beside the two legs on the sand, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions rate, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. It has the face has a frown. It's an angry face, and wrinkled lip. It's not a very lovable, not a very amicable face. The lips are wrinkled. Now, wrinkled means twisted, as if in a taunt. But wrinkle also, like the word antique over there, wrinkled also brings in the association of wrinkling with time or wrinkling with age. And it somehow foregrounds what ultimately happens with the power and authority of Ozymandias. So, and wrinkled lips and sneer of cold command. Sneer is this look, a contemptuous look. Look at the alliteration on C, cold command, suggesting power and political authority, military authority also to some extent, brought about by the use of the word command. And we'll point out the significance of this at the end of the poem, after our literal reading of the poem. Tell all these things, all these features of the face. What are these features? The frown, the wrinkled lips, which has a double meaning over here, or at least kind of a hidden suggestion, we can say. And sneer of cold command, the contemptuous look, and the power and the authority that comes out on the face, tells that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive. The sculptor understood these passions, understood the emotional state of Ozymandias, which is even today, which is surviving ironically reminding us once again that nothing else is surviving, but the creation of the sculptor, the sculptor's understanding of the emotion or the feeling of Ozymandias is still surviving, stamped on these lifeless things, almost etched out, engraved on the stone. So on the one hand, it is telling us that all this sneer of cold command and all this power and authority has gone. On the other hand, it's again pointing out at the ability of art to make life quasi-permanent to some extent. The hand that mocked them and the heart that failed. Now this can be taken in a number of ways. These two lines, these two phrases are quite ambiguous. Whose hand is and whose heart is being talked about over here? The most obvious reading is the hands of the sculptor, which mocked, which tried to imitate the passion. But ultimately it becomes a mockery. A mocking is imitation with contempt. It's not a positive imitation. But it ultimately seems to mock Ozymandias and remind us that except this statue, nothing of Ozymandias remains. And the heart that failed, the heart, some critics feel, is a heart of the creator, the sculptor, that understood and created it, nourished it rather. This is one way of reading it. And mockery becomes a very charged word over here, because it not only imitates Ozymandias' passions, but also reminds us that while these passions have not survived, Ozymandias has not survived, the artist in his imitation has survived. If we take it the other way, the hand can be taken as Ozymandias' hand, as he waves his hand. No, this is just imaginary because it's trunkless. It does not have the hand over there. So the poet could be imagining that he is waving his hand towards his people, almost in a kind of a mockery, because he is far more superior in power to his people. And the heart that failed. The heart could be Ozymandias' heart as well, because he was feeding his people. But this is not a very probable interpretation. Some critics have pointed out. The hand that mocked them and the heart that failed. Our interpretation would be the hand is obviously the artist's hand. Let's strike a balance between the two. And we have explained why the word mocked is very significant over here, in both in its sense of imitation as well as mimicry. The heart that failed perhaps refers to Ozymandias' heart, because it is his heart that actually gave birth to these emotions, which have been mocked or imitated by the hands of the artist, of the sculptor. Now I can understand that you will be a little confused as to which one to write if these words are given to explain, if these lines are given to explain this particular line. You can mention all three interpretations, or you can go for any one of the interpretations if you find that logically justifiable. You must remember that in literature, as long as you can logically justify an answer, there is no way in which, even when the examiner disagrees, the examiner can discredit you for that. I would rather go for the balance of the two. The first part, the hand referring to, as I've told you, to the sculptor's hand, and the heart referring to Ozymandias' heart. It's a sonnet, a 14-line poem. We'll come to the technical specifications of this, and this is where the first 8 lines end, the octet. And then comes the sestet, the next 6 lines. And on the pedestal, these words appear. So, we enter into another narrative, the narrative that is etched on the pedestal, the narrative that is inscribed on the pedestal. The story is being told by the poet. The poet gets to know it from the traveler from an antique land. And here we get into a pedestal, an inscription on the pedestal, which is a narrative within that narrative. My name is, and what is written over there? My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my work, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. What does it say? These are only these 2 lines. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. So it's not a supplication. If the inspiration is one of boast, it reminds us of the pleasure that we often get in seeing people who are less successful than us. So, ye mighty, even if you are mighty, then because I am mightier than you, look at my work, look at what I have made around me, look on my works, obviously referring to there may be the city around this particular, which once existed around this particular statue, and despair and be frustrated because you have not been able to achieve anything close to me. What is ironical over here? It's ironic because it's in the middle of a desert, and the city has, like Ozymandias' trunk, has completely disappeared in the course of time, obviously. Nothing beside remains. We come back to the narrative of the traveler. Beside this, nothing remains. So, look at again a kind of a reminder of the word mockery. Sorry. The inscription also seems to mock everything around, because Ozymandias is trying to say that this is my achievement, and the achievement is all in ruins. Nothing can be seen. Not even the ruins of the achievement. Everything has gone down. Around the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. So if you go around it, you'll find that everything is even leveled. The lone and level sands stretch far away. Lone, lonely over here, desolate, isolated, okay? And level sand, the lone and level sand stretch far away. Level reminds us of the fact that death and mutability is a great leveler. It makes all of us equal. Today, Ozymandias and the people whom he addresses, ye mighty, and the people whom he implores to despair, are all the same. Everything has been leveled by the sands around, by the sands of time, so to say. And Ozymandias, in fact, remains the ruler of the year around. Now, that is a cursory reading of the poem. In the next segment, we are going to read the poem further between the lines, taking into account the context in which it is written, and also we are going to pay our attention to the structure of the poem, given the fact that it is a sonnet. Thank you, students.